What's going on, guys? It's day 56 of flower. Here is our SOPs for our environment, and let's see what's going on in the garden. Everything's swelling up nicely. Let's go on and get into it. Alright guys, I just recorded you a whole video and realized that my finger was in the camera. It's very bright in here. So, excuse me. We got about an hour. I spent the last 20 minutes talking to you guys, and I just deleted the whole damn video. It's kind of frustrating, but I'll try to recap what I said and see where it leads us, you know. We got about an hour before the lights turn off in here, but it's day 50. So it's day 50 this week, guys. Last week, I totally messed up and looked at the wrong date on my calendar. I keep all my calendar dates in my phone, and looked at one of the rooms at the Office Bangers date, and I flipped that room a week before this room, so I thought we were day 49 already. And going back through my videos this week and kind of just adding the end title screen videos, I realized, like, oh shit, we were barely in day 42 when I started the cake protocol, and we're not supposed to start the cake protocol till day 49. So they went ahead and had cake for about 2 days. You know, really flushed out the medium there, kind of stripped the nitrogen from these girls while they were still putting on weight. So I went ahead and let that reservoir finish up and just made an A and B again and started feeding them that. So I don't think it's going to have that detrimental of an effect, especially not on these gorillas, because you could see they're already kind of going into senescence here. We're already swelling up. All of our pistils are receding, our calyxes are swelling. And we're pretty much going to be done with these. I mean, these gorillas finished they always finish about day 60, you know, where everything else, like especially my OGs are going to go at least 65 days. The King Louis is going to be going at least 65 days. The gelatos, sometimes they're done at day 63. If we can really get the VPD dialed in and really get these drybacks dialed in during this last week, then they do tend to finish and put more color on if we can strip the nitrogen out of them. So again, guys, we could try to be as perfect as we want, but we're gonna make mistakes. And even me, I've been doing this for, you know, a third of my life. You know, yeah, about a third of my, a little more than a third of my life. Like 20 years. I've been doing this since I was a teenager. So, you know, I've grown in every medium that there is, and I still make mistakes. So, you know, especially when I got a lot of stuff going on, whether it was lack of sleep, overwork, whatever it is. I had back-to-back harvests in my other facilities. So I've just been super busy trying to stay on top of these videos, trying to give you guys good information, it's a lot for my brain to hold on to. So I made a mistake. Good thing it was only a 2-day lapse. So, you know, that they're not really getting too bad of an effect from it. You know, some of these King Louis are fading a little earlier than usual, and these things hold on to nitrogen like crazy. And as we have learned this run, these girls do not like too much food anyway. They do not like too much food. They do not like too much light. And you could see that plain and simple by just a few inches, you know, 6 inches, where we got this top here that is a little foxtail-y, a little more spaced out, and you come down and you got perfect nug size on these flowers down here in the middle of the canopy. Come over here, you see this thing, just a 6-inch difference. You know, we're pushing the same amount of light to them, but as far as what our wattage is coming off the top, but they're gonna have different results because of how much pressure is getting put on them and where they're sitting. Same thing with the gorillas. You know, these girls sitting in the middle of the room, are stacked, their internodal spacing's a little bit better because they're getting that really good cross lighting there, and we're able to put on a little bit more biomass as far as the size of the flowers that came out. And also the generative steering that we did in the beginning really kept the internodal spacing tight. You got stuff over here that's a little less light hitting these girls, and you can see that the stretch on them is better, but we do still have not better, but you can see the stretch on them is more significant. But we do still have really nice internodal spacing. You know, they're going to have nice developed buds on them. So your lighting does matter, and how far away your plants are from your lights does matter, and exactly where those photons are going to get blasted and how intense they're going to get blasted with them is going to show up in your garden. And you know, even if you look over here, so this is the King Louis that's getting hand watered. It's a little more lower to the light, still very significantly green, but that's also, I think, because it is getting hand watered, so they are getting harder drybacks. So the concentration of the salt inside of the substrate is getting a little bit higher, so the EC on it is most likely coming out a little bit higher. Now when I test my runoff, I test full table runoff, and I like to test it in the middle of my P2 shots. So my maintenance shots in the middle of the night, is when I like to come and test my runoff as often as possible. And the reason that being the best time to do it is because, you know, that first set of runoff is going to bring all the salts from your benches down into that runoff bin. So you're not really going to get a accurate reading off of that. So you let that go, let that flush out, and you get that next set, that first shot of P2 that comes off should give you a little bit of runoff. You don't want too much runoff, but if you should be getting enough runoff to give yourself a measurement on your EC and your pH. And that's the best way I found for testing pH as far as full benches go. You come through and you could test one plant. You know, you could pick up one of these plants here, put a tray under it, and see what the EC is coming out from there. But the only problem with that is all these plants are going to be eating at different rates, because whether they're a little more healthy, they're a little larger, they got a bigger root system, bigger base of a root system for them. It all makes a difference on what it is that you're seeing coming out on your runoff. So the best way to do it, and to kind of keep a happy medium, because again guys, we are striving to try and keep the most balanced and happy medium between everything, because we want to be able to have repeatable results. And that's the benefit of running hydro. Our downside of running soil, or you know, a live culture thing. Now look, I'm not bashing people who grow in soil. I've grown in soil. I've grown in every medium that you could think of. I've grown in pretty much all ways of growing. I've grown outdoors, greenhouse, indoors, HPS, LED, metal halide HPS split, LED HPS split. Pretty much anything you guys could think of, I've tried out. And the problem with soil, in my opinion, is that you're going to run amendments in there, and when you run amendments in there, they're going to break down at different times, which is going to make the results that you're getting repeatable much harder, because you could do the exact same thing from run to run and have drastically different results. And that could just be because, let's say your plants were calling for phosphorus, and you know, whatever you put in there, bone meal, whatever it is that you put in there for an amendment to give your plants phosphorus, hasn't had a chance to break down yet. Maybe because you don't have as much microbial activity in the soil that you did the run prior, or whatever the case may be. You know, you're going to have runs that are going to have better secondary metabolites because of this, because the fact that, hey, when something started breaking down, the plants were able to use it at that specific time, and they had great results from it, you know. But then the next run, you do the same thing, and you're like, hey man, what's going on here? I did the same exact thing, and I'm getting completely different results. And it really just makes growing frustrating. Now, if you're just doing this for fun, it can be fun. Get in there, mix it, get your hands dirty, you know, get all that stuff. Like, trust me, guys, when I started doing this stuff, all that stuff was super fun. That was like, all right, cool. Like, I got my own unique mix. I got my you know, my alfalfa meal and my bone meal and my back guano, and I'm adding it all in there, and let's see what happens, you know. And after a couple runs, it's like, oh fuck, I scorched these plants. Oh damn, these things are yellowing out in week 4, and I don't know what it is that I need to do. So you just start panicking, running water through them, flushing them, start feeding them bottled nutrients on top of your amendments because you think that they're hungry, and the calcium, and it's really just, you're at the whim of your microbial activity when it comes to organics, you know. And in order for me to have a repeatable process and really get informative data that has the evidence to back it up, rock wool was the best option for me. And you know, I've run cocoa, but cocoa's messy. Cocoa's just like soil, but you're running salts, you know. So I've strayed away from cocoa and went to rock wool. Now, the learning curve on rock wool is a little bit higher. Your opportunity to destroy a crop is also a little bit higher, way easier. You don't really have too much, like, any forgiveness, you know. The cation exchange in these things is like, you're pretty much, you have no buffer. You have zero buffer. It's like straight from substrate to root, and if you fuck that up and you give them something bad, and once the plants get that damage to them, it's really hard to reverse. But when you get it right and you dial it in, it is one of the most rewarding ways to grow is hydroponics. You're going to get the most explosive growth that you've ever had before. You're going to get some of the best expressions that you're going to have before, and you're also going to scorch the plants worse than you ever had before, and you're going to question whether or not you were even good at growing because you keep making mistakes. And you know, like I said, the learning curve is significant on rock wool, but very rewarding in the end, you know. So that's it. That's my spiel on growing in soil, growing in versus growing in rock wool. I had somebody ask me about auto pots in a couple videos ago, and I don't know if it was because they were thinking about growing in auto pots because they are growing in auto pots or what the case may be. But look, guys, I don't have any experience with auto pots. The only thing that I can compare it to is I've had moms that I've kept for longer than I should have because I didn't want to lose those genetics, and we had to fill the room, and I didn't have enough clones to fill the room and make myself some fresh moms. So they got a little more root mass than they should have, and they were drying out the day before I could make it in, before the next day when I could make it in to water them. So, and I didn't have them on drippers or a irrigation system. So what I did was I just put a tray on the bottom, and instead of letting the plants run off into waste, I would let the plants run off into the tray and let them sit in the tray overnight. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys have probably done the same thing when plants were just eating a little too much. Maybe you used too small of a pot for your flowering cycle and they were just drinking, or your room was too hot and they were just drinking, BPD was too high and they were just drinking. So that's the only really comparable thing that I can see with that. And the only problems that I've had with that is the plants tend to never get that salt flushed out of them. So it just keeps accumulating and you keep wickering up more salt, it dries back, those salts concentrate, crystallize, and really become unavailable to the plant. And that's really just going to make your root zone very high salinity and start locking a lot of these nutrients out. So the only way to get rid of that is to top feed and flush those nutrients out. And I don't think you're able to do that with the autopots. Again, guys, I've never used them, so I'm not exactly sure. But from my understanding, it's pretty much a wicker system where you're bottom feeding, and you know, your plants, your substrate is essentially sucking up the water from the bottom. Now, ebb and flow is a little bit different, because ebb and flow, you're running water all the way. You're running the substrate fully saturated in water, and then letting that drain out. So that's essentially going to water down all of the salt concentration in there, and be able to pull those crystallized salts out that are no longer available, and give them fresh nutrients to work with. From what I understand, the autopots just kind of sit on the water just kind of sits on the bottom, and the plants kind of absorb, or the roots and the substrate kind of absorb the water through like, you know, it's pretty self-explanatory, the wicker system, and it kind of wicks up. Now, the only other problem with that is that look, I'm not a scientist here, but I'm pretty sure that salts are not going to be as efficient moving against gravity through the substrate. You know, like when you wash your car, you let that water evaporate, and it's going to leave all those salts on the salts, the calciums, whatever it is that's in your tap water. You're going to see those come up on your windows and stuff like that. So that's essentially what is going to happen at the bottom of your root base. Your plants are still going to eat, because obviously the roots are going to the bottom, but a lot of your feeder roots and a lot of your roots that absorb the nutrients are up at the top. You know, they've just evolved that way because of in nature, water is going to hit the top of the soil and drain down into the roots. So a lot of that nutrient solution is not going to make it up to those feeder roots. Now, like I said, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know exactly what is happening when those nutrients are not getting pushed to the top. Now, the pros of this is you don't have to install an irrigation system. They're all self-contained, and you're going to be able to keep your plants happy, which is great. If you guys are growing, you just want good product, good medicine to smoke. You just want to have happy, healthy plants and be able to bring them to the end, then the more power to you guys. Get yourself some autopots, run them, see if you like them. That's great, but that's pretty much my opinion on them. I don't really have any bad things to say about them because I've never used them, but from what I see and what I theorize, I don't know if that's going to be the best way, especially if you are striving to get better at your hobby. You know, if you're really just striving to try to bring out the best genetic potential in your plants by increasing EC when necessary, decreasing EC when necessary, adjusting the watering content. You know, I think the autopots just run on soil, but I'm not, again, I've never run them, guys, so I'm not sure. And the manipulation that I get to do in rock wool is not quite as nice when you try to do it in soil. I've done it before, and it just doesn't work quite the same. You're gonna get good results, but it's just different. So, anyways, rant over about autopots. I'm not an expert on those, and my suggestion would be an alternative is to just get yourself a tray. You know, you're spending that money on 4 individual autopots. You might as well get yourself a 4x4 tray, get it lifted, and be able to drain all that waste out of there, and just kind of get rid of whatever it is, all those crystallized salts that are getting flushed out of those plants. But again, guys, to each his own. I'm just here to share what it is that I'm doing and my opinion on the methods that other people are doing. But everything is looking fantastic in here, and we are really just trying to maintain these parameters and get these girls to go into senescence. Now you can see these gorillas here are pretty much at that point. They're 60-day strains. They're day 56. They're pretty much already done. Like, if I wanted to pull these now, I pretty much could, and I don't think I will see too much of an impact to the weight. that's going to come off of them, but I will wind up pushing these at minimum to day 63. Worst case scenario, day 65, because our King Louis can go 65, 70 days. Our Skywalkers can also go 65, 70 days. And what I'm hoping, like I said, this mistake that I made could be a blessing in disguise. And what I'm hoping is by pulling the nitrogen a little early out of these girls, because they tend to hold on to it a little bit longer, and these leaves stay a lot greener later on into their growth cycle. What I'm hoping is that by really triggering them with our temperature drop, our lowering of the EC, and really triggering them into starting their senescence and really getting them to start finishing. Now look guys, I know we can't force the plants to finish. That's not a thing. That doesn't exist. Like, you're not going to do that. But there is plant physiologic. Man, I'm having a little bit of a brain fart. But pretty much our triggers inside of the plants are going to tell it what to do at certain points in its life cycle. Physiology, Jesus Christ. So them lacking nutrients is going to get them to realize that there's not that much food, and that they're going to have to finish and start packing on resin in order to try and catch pollen out of the air. So what I'm hoping is that mistake is going to help them get to that a little bit earlier and help us get to the finish line a little bit earlier. Now, will I suffer on my weight? I could possibly suffer on my weight, but these girls are packing on so much weight. You could see they're leaning over already. They're probably going to have to get some string on them to hold them up, because they are not going to be able to hold themselves up. They're leaning all over the place. They're packing on super healthy weight. They're super dense, rock solid. Our gelatos over here are getting some color on them already. So if you remember last run, I was having a little bit of difficulty getting color on these girls, and that was because my AC was having problems. So it was very hard to put the VPD pressure on these girls and maintain a low temperature and a low humidity. You know, it's one of the harder, it is a harder thing to do. So especially this late in the run, and if you are underpowered on either your dehumidifier or your AC, you're just going to have more difficulty getting to the VPD range that you want to. So we just try our best, guys. We really, nobody's room is going to be perfect, you know. Your AC is going to shut off at some point, and you're going to drop or higher your temperature up or down a couple of degrees, and you know, the plants, you just try to keep a happy medium for everything, and the plants will hopefully give you the results that you want. So yeah, so 72 degrees, 50% humidity. I know right now we're at like 75 and 60%. That's just because I came in here and I shut the dehumidifier off, the fan off, to make you guys the video, because everything's a little bit loud. But yeah, I'm very happy with the way that things are going in here, even with the mistake that we made. I think we're gonna still be able to have great results out of this room. So if you guys do make a mistake yourself, don't get discouraged, you know, just get back on track, get back right where you were, try to stay motivated and get in here. And small things like what I did are really not a detrimental effect, but as I told you guys before, running rock wool, your results are kind of instant, and once you make a mistake, like, you're gonna see it in your plants pretty quickly, relatively quickly, and you really have to make those adjustments as fast as possible to not let that effect ruin your garden. So anyway, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this week. I don't really have much more to talk about what's going on in this room. We're kind of just in cruise control right now to the finish line. I guess I'll talk about watering. So starting week 7, we started removing our P2 maintenance shots. So P1, we're bringing them up to saturation, and then we have about 4 or 5 maintenance shots throughout the night. We were all the way up to about 7 waterings during bulk, and now we are down to about 5 waterings. And 4 of those waterings happen about within the first 4 hours of lights on. I start watering about an hour and a half after lights on, and then until we get to runoff, like every 30 minutes, I'm gonna hit them with 250 milliliters. And once we reach runoff by about the 4th hour of lights on, then we're gonna let them chill for about 2 hours, then hit them with a maintenance shot, 250 mils, 2 hours, then hit them with a maintenance shot. So we get to about 7 waterings, give them 2 to 3 hours of dry back before lights turn off. So now what we have done is every 3 or 4 days going into week 7, we have cut back a water. So about day 46, 47, took away their last watering. So now they went from 3 hours of dry back to about 5 hours of dry back overnight. And remember, we are also lowering the temperature. So if you're not able to lower your temperatures, then you really can't pull that much water off of them, because they're going to be drinking more, especially if you have high temperatures and you're really pushing the VPD on them and hiring the VPD on them. They're going to be drinking and transpiring a lot more water. So if you're going to follow this, then just make sure that you try to keep your VPD range in there, and not push your plants too hard, because you're gonna mess something up if you try to do this and you're not able to keep the temperatures and your humidity where you need to be. And also your CO2, guys. Like your CO2 is really going to control the stomata size and how much they are transpiring. Essentially, that's the way they breathe. So they're going to, and that's also the way that they dissipate their water. So what you don't want to do is put too much pressure on them if you do not have CO2, because the stomatas are going to open up so wide that they're just going to leak all the water out and really just drink like crazy if your VPD is off. So you want to make sure that you can keep your CO2 levels maintained to really keep those stomatas in an ideal open closed position, you know what I mean? And just have them kind of cycle through that as your CO2 is fluctuating throughout the day, getting eaten by the plants, dropping, you know, and then having your CO2 regulator turn back on, get them fed with their CO2 and whatnot. So we've removed 2 waterings. So right now we're at about 6 hours of dry back before lights off, and that's really going to give them a chance to start finishing up. You know, it's going to also keep them from dropping their EC too fast and really stripping these girls earlier than they need to. Once we switch into cake, you know, we're switching into cake. Every time you give them that dry back, those salts are going to concentrate in that block, and your EC is going to spike a little bit. But since our input EC is going down when we add our cake, we're going from almost 3.0, that's about 2.8. We're going all the way down to about 1.2, 1.3, and really just trying to slowly bring the EC down in there, but also give them enough dry back to stress them and let them know, like, hey, we need to finish up because we might die, because we're getting less food, we're getting less water, yada yada yada, etc. So that's pretty much it that's going on for the waterings, guys. We're in cruise control. Let's finish this room strong. Leave your comments, leave your questions down below. I appreciate you guys watching. Anybody has any video ideas or any questions that you feel I didn't answer in this video for this time in our cycle, let me know down below. I'll try to address it maybe in some shorts, or I'll just address it in next week's vid. I try to address a couple of things today that were mentioned to me in the comments over the last week. So hopefully those of you guys that did ask those questions got those answers, and yeah, here we are. We're racing to the finish line now, guys. Appreciate you guys. Happy farming. Talk to you later. Like, subscribe. Peace.